Hey, Pastor, doesn't science disprove the Bible?
Isn't Genesis just a fairy tale?
Is God for real? Did he really create everything in 6 literal days?
Didn't God just use the Big Bang?
Why is there death and suffering? Do you really believe the Bible?
Didn't man evolve from apes?
For answers to these questions and more, stand by for Believing the Bible.
Welcome to Believing the Bible. This is Scott Lane with Terry Reed, Dr. Daniel Harris, Dr. Carl Williams, and our producer, Jeremiah Rosenthal, all with the San Antonio Bible-Based Science Association. We are here to reassure you that you can believe the Bible from the very first verse. Today, we're going to talk about the human yolk sac. Not normally one of your normal conversation starters on the street, but it's something that people have taken hold of and said, well, this shows evolution. This shows something called recapitulation theory. This shows our evolution is reproduced in our genetic reproduction, etc. Ernst Haeckel is famous for pushing that more than 100 years ago. The sad thing is this disproven theory of recapitulation, that your yolk sac and cells go through a process of repeating the evolution of the fish and then the amphibian and then the mammal and all this kind of stuff, has been debunked for 100 years, and yet we still find it in 1997 in textbooks.
For shame.
It is a shame. In humans, the yolk sac is a temporary balloon-like structure attached to the belly of the developing embryo. Question first for you guys. Is the yolk sac vestigial? And when I say vestigial, that means something that we used to need and now we don't need anymore, that evolution has thrown away. Is it vestigial?
Obviously not, because if we didn't have it, the embryo would not develop. And it's also interesting that the evolutionists have recognized the problem with calling things vestigial. That term has changed its definition over the years. It has evolved from meaning a useless leftover from genetic evolution to an altered function of the organ from its original evolution. So they're trying to save their theory by just redefining the terms.
They're always redefining their terms.
So that is something you have to watch out for. When someone says, oh, that's just a vestigial organ, make sure you ask them specifically, what do you mean by vestigial? And you may just find out that they're saying that, hey, golly, the human embryo is different than the dog embryo and the salamander embryo and the fish embryo. And by golly, yes, you're right. They are different. And they were designed that way.
So point one about this is that it is not useless.
Mm-hmm.
It is functional and essential. It's part of the development of our embryo. But the second point to being a vestigial in this whole thing of recapitulation is the idea, well, that's just a chicken yolk. Is that true in any way?
Not in the slightest.
It may look like something, but that's not its function. Embryologists today call this structure the
umbilical vesicle.
As explained in previous articles on creation, the UV is responsible for the production of the first production of blood cells. It serves an important role in the transfer of nutrients, and its cells eventually give rise to the epithelium lining of the trachea, bronchi, lungs, and digestive tract, and even to cells that will eventually become egg or sperm cells. So it has
utility.
Not only does the UV produce the first red blood cells, but it's also responsible for making the first white blood cells. These immune cells travel from the UV to the liver and then to the bones, where they help make the bone marrow, which will become the production site of all red and most white blood cells. So this is part of a design system. Now, truthfully, it is temporary. You want to comment on any of that, Carl?
Well, just like the placenta is temporary.
Yes.
The placenta is the organ that God created that allowed the embryo to essentially steal nutrients from the mother and to build itself up, in other words, to nourish itself. And it is temporary. So when the baby is born, the placenta is no longer needed. Likewise, the yolk sac provides a temporary source of red cells and white cells before the bone marrow and other organs in the body can continue that for the lifetime of the baby.
You are listening to Believing the Bible. This is Scott Lane with Terry Reed, Dr. Daniel Harris, and Dr. Carl Williams. If you would like to learn more, go to sabsa.org. That is sabbsa.org. Today, we're talking about the human yolk sac and whether it is vestigial, whether it is part of recapitulation, what's its uses. And You mentioned a word there, which I think fits into the evolutionary mindset, which you may or may not have wanted to use. Does it actually steal from something else?
Well, it takes without giving back. Is that stealing? Okay. But anyway, the mother's blood has hemoglobin that hangs onto the oxygen at a weaker tenacity than the baby's blood. The baby's blood has a hemoglobin called fetal hemoglobin, which has a higher affinity to the oxygen molecule and thus can steal, if you will, the oxygen from the mother's blood. Otherwise, it would not survive. So I'm not going to say that's the best term necessary, but it's something I was
The reason I latched onto it is because I believe that is exactly the idea that a lot of evolutionists would use, that just by chance, this greater affinity to draw hemoglobin by the placenta occurred so that the baby could survive, etc. To me, that's not stealing. It's a design function.
Yes, if it weren't there in the first place, the baby would never have been produced.
Now, furthermore, contrary to the idea that the human embryo develops through similar stages that resembles its evolutionary history, new research shows that there are significant differences in the function and development of this so-called yolk sac, which again only looks like a yolk sac. And when we compare the yolk sac in humans and mice, they are very different. They have very different functions. They have very different development. And this is all despite the sharing a mammalian ancestor. This whole idea of recapitulation, that we go through the stages of evolution during our development. True or false?
False.
And it's only been known to be false for how long now?
Over 160 years.
160 years. And yet, in 1997, it was in the textbooks.
I was taught that in the early 1970s when I was going through pre-med and med school.
Fascinating. Why? Why would that hang on?
Lies are very popular for people who love lies.
It gives evidence for something that's not there.
Is the evolutionary community that desperate?
No, they're that deceived.
They're that deceived. Very, very interesting. So recapitulation theory is not valid. What about the thought that this thing in some way is vestigial, or that vestigial organs are out there? For example, they talk about your appendix.
Right.
You don't need your appendix. We cut them out.
Certainly, we used to do that when I was in medical school. On the surgery rotation, we would look to see if the patient still had their appendix, and if we were going into the abdomen for any other reason, let's say for a gallbladder or whatever, and we would get a permission slip signed to say, "Oh, we'll take your appendix out while we're there to prevent you from having appendicitis in the future." So that was essentially ill-advised information based on evolutionary thought that the appendix would eventually kill someone, potentially. And certainly people do die of appendicitis, not nearly as often as it used to be. But the thought was the appendix had no useful function, which has been disproven. And certainly people who have had appendectomies are more prone to various blood-borne cancers such as leukemia, lymphoma, and the like. So anything that has to do with the production of blood and immune system is at risk if the appendix has been removed. So it should not be routinely done. And indeed, the American method of dealing with appendicitis has been found to be less than appropriate anyway, because a lot of countries use antibiotics to treat it very successfully to maintain the appendix in the person.
Am I correct that one of the things that's been identified with it is that it's a holding sac for good bacteria, and that
is one of the things that it can do, yes.
Yeah.
And it also has for the white cell, the immune system line.
So it has purpose.
It does.
It is not vestigial.
Not in the original vestigial definition. Like I said, It has been changed by evolutionists. So if you use the current evolutionary definition, yes, it is vestigial, but not in the original, which was to say that all vestigial organs are useless leftovers.
Interesting part about that vestigial part is when you go back 150 years, they had a list of 180 parts of your body that you could cut out. They're just simply vestigial, that you don't need them. Among that was your thymus, your
thyroid,
your
parathyroid,
your parathyroid, your coccyx, your tailbone, etc. Do you know what that list is down to today?
Zero.
It's a nice round number because we found all of them. Your coccyx, you don't sit right if you don't have your tailbone. It's not that it used to be a tail, and that it is a vestige of our mammalian ancestry.
It's the floor of the abdominal cavity.
Absolutely. If you didn't have it, your insides would literally fall out.
Folks, what we've discussed is that the yolk sac is not some product of evolution. It is a product of design by a great creator.
Amen.
Believing the Bible now has a new way you can support our ministry and get some great gifts. For a donation of $10 or more, we will email you a copy of Repetition in the Bible by Jack Cassione, which shows the Bible to be a self-proving document and shows God's protection of His Word over the ages. For a donation of $25 or more, we will also mail you a copy of Scott Lane's book, What If God Wrote the Bible, showing 6 things we should find in the world and in the Bible if God is the author of the Bible. To get these great gifts, send your check or money order to SABSA at 7620 Avery, Live Oak, Texas 78233. That's SABBSA at 7620 Avery Road, Live Oak, Texas 78233. This information for ordering is also on our contact page at sabsa.org.
Information for creation events in our area are on our website's calendar page. For more information or to schedule a presentation, go to sabsa.org or call 210-599-7240. When you go to our website, you can click on a link to our newsletter. Our website has a link for contact information on which you can order our newsletter to be emailed to you, or you can call us. Also go to whyshouldyoubelieve.com. That is Terry's website containing articles looking at current day issues from a biblical perspective. SABSA meets the second Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. We are now meeting at Faith Lutheran Church just south of the corner of Jones Maltzberger and Thousand Oaks. There you will find biblical apologetics and creation science teaching found nowhere else in Bexar County, as well as the availability of books and videos on these important subjects. If you missed any part of this show, you can listen to the show anytime by going to the AM 630 KSLR, the Word in South Texas website. Click on KSLR Podcast, scroll down until you find Believing the Bible. Please join us again next Saturday for Believing the Bible. I'm Scott Lane, and for Terry Reed, Dr. Carl Williams, and Ed Salzwell, thanks for listening, and we hope you found today a reason to believe the Bible.